Hello everyone, it's Gina from orchidandopal.com and I am back today with another tutorial brought to you from the materials in the Gina's Picks for September 2021 that I have done in partnership with Eureka Crystal Beads. I will leave everything that I'll be using today right down below the video, linked and listed as far as the quantity that you'll need and the different colors. And if I have a coupon code available, it will be down below as well. If you've never done flat chenille stitch before, I definitely recommend checking out my flat chenille stitch 101 tutorial, which I will link right in the corner of the video. That will give you the basics on this stitch, which will be a great practice before you start trying to do anything like this checkerboard pattern or actually trying to weave it directly into these specialty cymbal findings, which you see down below. We're going to be using a combination of 8/0 seed beads with a Picasso finish and also some 11/0 seed beads. And what I really like about this bracelet is the slinky fabric-like nature of it and the professional finish that the Sitanos 3 beaded jewelry endings give to this bracelet. Here's a look at it up close. I've done a couple different flat chenille tutorials before, but not necessarily in a checkerboard pattern like this. You can see the end there is woven directly into the beadwork, and I just finished it off with an extender chain over there and a lobster clasp on the other side. We'll be using some 6-pound FireLine today, as well as a size 10 beading needle, and you can go ahead and thread your needle with a comfortable length of beading thread. Gather up your materials, and we will go ahead and jump into this tutorial. What I like to do with this bracelet is to start out by just completing the beadwork, and then I like to add these special cymbal finding ends at the end of the beadwork. And when you know how to add on one of those ends, you'll know how to add the other one. We'll get to that later on in the video. For now, let's go ahead and get started with the flat chenille stitch pattern that we will be continuing throughout the whole length of the beadwork. And to get started on your length of beading thread, you're going to alternate between picking up 2 8/0 seed beads in your first color and 2 8/0 seed beads in your second color until you have a total of 14 8/0s picked up. So this is what you want to have on your beading needle, and then you can go ahead and bring those beads down, and I like to leave about a 12-inch tail at this point, and that's because that way we don't have to add on thread later when we are adding that special end finding to our beadwork. So if you feel more comfortable, feel free to add a stop bead right there. Otherwise, we can just proceed on. You can leave that long tail thread that you'll pop a needle back on later. So once you have your 14 8/0 seed beads, we can consider this our row number 1, and we're going to continue to add row upon row to this. Just think of this as the bottom row, and we're just going to be weaving back and forth, creating more and more rows as we go, as we do in flat chenille stitch. To start creating a new row, we need to pick up one 11/0. We're going to pick up another 8/0 in the sea foam and then another 11/0. So have those 3 beads on your needle. And then instead of going back through this very last sea foam, you're going to go through the next 2 8/0 seed beads. So I'm going to go through that sea foam and then that yellow color and pull. And as with a lot of things in beading, it gets easier as you have more length that you've completed. So just have patience with yourself, especially if this is a newer stitch. It does take a little bit of time to get used to, but once you do, I think you're really going to enjoy it. So think of this 11/0 right here as being one of our 11/0s on the side of the bracelet. You're going to have one of those framing each of the colors in your checkerboard pattern along the side. We're going to continue on with this row. We need to add an 11/0 in between every 2 8/0 seed beads. So coming out of that yellow 8/0, let's pick up another 11/0 and then go through the next 2 8/0 seed beads. Let's do that again, picking up an 11/0. This time I'm coming out of the sea foam and I'm going to go through the next sea foam and the next yellow. We're ready for our next one, picking up an 11-0, going through the next two. And repeat all the way down. 11-0, go through the next two. 11-0 through the next two. And what do we do now? We just have one left. We're going to pick up an 11-0 and we're just going to go through the single sea foam that we have left on our strand. And pull all of that. And the idea is that these 11-0s are going to be sticking up on the same side once this gets going. Right now they want to go on alternating sides, but you'll see what they're supposed to do in the next step. And you can see they're breaking up those 8-0s, every 2 8-0s all the way down the row. Now we're ready to start our next row, so we're going to head to the right again. And what we need to do is pick up an 11-0 and pick up one of our 8-0 seafoam colors. And we're going to head through that last 11-0 that we had just added on that previous row. There we go. And we can set that down. That's one of our end 11-0s as well. So we have one on each end now, and that's what you're going to see all the way up the bracelet, is you're going to have one 11-0 running parallel up each end. But don't worry about that right now. Let's just keep going. And now we want to add more 8-0s. So we're going to be stacking some more on top of these next two. And since we're doing a checkerboard pattern, we've got two of our seafoam here, one up here. We need one more to complete that little square. We'll pick that up, and then we're going to pick up a yellow to begin our next square of 8-0s. So have those two 8-0s on your needle, and then just go through the next 11-0. And pull, and you can see now you have another row of 8-0s forming over the top of that original row. And we're going to continue on by now picking up a yellow and a seafoam to stack those on top of the other two down there. And once again, we're going to go through just the next 11-0. We're going to pretty much do this all the way down, alternating. Now we need a seafoam and a yellow. Then we'll go through the next 11-0. Then we need a yellow and a seafoam. You can see how that 11-0 wants to be at the bottom, but eventually they're all going to land in the right spot. Just go through it regardless of where it wants to be at the moment. Just going through that 11-0. And eventually this will all fall into place. You can see it's already starting to do that a little bit better now. Now our seafoam and our yellow. Through the 11-0. And then we need to pick up a yellow and a seafoam. We'll go down the 11-0 like we normally would, and then I'll show you how to continue on. You can see I'm coming out of this 11-0 right here, and you may have to get your beads to set into the proper place so they match what you see here, because it does start to want to get a little twisted at the beginning, like I said, but I promise it gets easier. And you still have these two seafoam coming after that 11-0, and then you have the one that's supposed to be sitting on the end. Well, you want to proceed by going down through the seafoam that was on the previous row, down there like that. But you need to get up to form another row. So you need to then proceed up through the 11-0 that's on the side. and then head through the 2 seafoam that are on that second row of 8-O's. All right, so if you've gotten this far, you're doing good because it gets easier now. So now what you want to do is add in your 11-O in between each of these 2 colors. So kind of like what we did before, except we're going to be putting one in an alternating pattern in this next row. So in between the 2 seafoam and the 2 yellow. So I've picked up an 11-O and I'm going through the next 2 yellow. Then we're going to pick up an 11-O and go through the 2 seafoam. I'm going to turn this vertically so my fingers aren't getting in the way so much. Then we want to pick up another 11-O, go through the 2 yellow, pick up an 11-O and go through the 2 seafoam, pick up an 11-O and go through the 2 yellow, pick up an 11-O and go through the 2 seafoam. Pull that nice and tight. And this is what you should have. So now you can see that next row of 11-Os that you added, they're alternating with that row of 11-Os before, and that's going to continue all the way up the piece. Each row of 11-Os that you see is going to alternate in position. But let's continue on. We've got our first little checkerboard pattern here with our 4 squares of 8-Os. And now we're going to build on a new couple of rows of 8-Os in the alternate color of 8-O seed bead squares. So for our next row, beginning our next row of 8-Os, let's pick up now our yellow. We're going to pick up 2 of those. And again, I'm going to move my piece vertically so that my fingers aren't so in the way. And we're going to go through the 11-O that is now sticking up. It's easier to see. Then, because we're alternating our colors and doing a checkerboard, we'll pick up our seafoam, 2 of those, and go through the next 11-O. Then pick up your 2 yellow, go through the 11-O that's sticking out, pick up your 2 seafoam, just keep alternating this all the way down through the 11-O, 2 yellow, through the 11-O. You can see how this is just adding on length 1 row at a time. And there's so many different patterns, color combinations, stripes, all different sorts of things you can do with flat chenille. This is just another alteration on that design. Now, when you get to the end of the row and you have your 2 yellows that you're ready to add on, what you need to do is something just a little bit different here. Keep in mind that 11-O is going to be on the side, so just ignore that one. It's kind of like you don't have another one to go through at this point. So what you're going to do, pick up your yellows, 2 of those, and now sew back through the 2 seafoam on the previous row. And you can see what that did is it popped those 2 yellows right up there. And now what we want to do is head up through that first yellow that we get to, pick up an 11-O, go down the next yellow, just like that. And we're setting the framework for our next row. Now we need to head over to the left. To do that, we're going to pick up the 11-O that's going to be sitting on the side, as well as the next 8-O yellow that's going to sit up here to form our next little unit. And we want to go through the 11-O that's sticking up, and we can go through the next 2 8-O seed beads. This will start to make sense later if you're not used to it. All right. So looking at our work again, We're heading off to the left. We need to add another 11-0 section. Again, that's going to alternate with the one below us. It's going to look like this, and it's going to separate those two colors this time. So let's pick up an 11-0, go through the sea foam and the yellow, pick up an 11-0, go through the yellow and the sea foam, keep going all the way down, picking up an 11-0, going through our next two 8-0s, and doing that again. This one going through the next two, and just like before, we're left with one right here. That's okay. We're still going to pick up an 11-0 and just go through the last remaining yellow 8-0 seed bead. And that completed that row of 11-0s. So take a moment to look at your work and get the lay of the land. And you can see that you've started that new alternating checkerboard color, but we need to finish those up with this next row of 8-0s. Because remember, we're making these little squares of 4 8-0 seed beads of the same color. So as we're heading off to the right now, we need to remember to add our side 11-0 first. It's going to sit right there. We're also going to pick up a yellow, and we're going to go through the 11-0 that's sticking out. That stacks our yellow on top of the one below it and adds the 11-0 on the side. And let's keep going, finishing up these units. So we need now a yellow and a sea foam. And I'm going to turn this once again. And we're going to go down through the 11-0 that's sticking up. Now we need a sea foam and a yellow. And go through the next 11-0. Now we need a yellow and a sea foam. And through the next 11-0. And we keep going just like that to the end of the row. Through the 11-0. Our last two 8-0s for that row. And so you would normally go through that 11-0 that's right there, right? And we had this final yellow already in place from what we did before. And now to get up here to head left to do our next row, we need to go down through the yellow that's in the previous row, then go up the side 11-0, and now we can head over through the two yellow 8-0s to begin the next row, which is where we're going to be adding in our 11-0s again. You can see how those keep alternating, like I said, and now they're going to be in this position, separating each color. So we'll pick up an 11-0, go through the two sea foam, pick up an 11-0, go through the two yellow, pick up an 11-0, go through the two sea foam, 11-0 through the two yellow, 11-0 through the two sea foam, and 11-0 through the two yellow. There we go. So it's starting to come along. And now we've got two checkerboard units completed with our alternating colors, meaning we're going to switch back now. And what's going to be on top of this is our sea foam. So now as we head off to the right again, we're going to pick up our two sea foam, give this a little turn, and head down that 11-0 that's sticking out, pull. Now picking up the alternate color, which is the yellow, go through the 11-0, alternate all the way down. And once we get to our last color there, remember, since there's nothing left for us to go through, we'll pick up our 2 sea foam, but now we'll go back through the 2 yellow that will be right underneath it. That will pop those 2 sea foam right up there where we want them. Then we'll go diagonally up through that first sea foam, and we'll add an 11-0 right in there in between, and go through the next sea foam. And now we're ready to head off to the left again. We're going to pick up the 11-0 that'll sit on the side, as well as 1 sea foam. Go through this 11-0 that we just added that's sticking up, and then go through the next 2 8-0 seed beads. There we go. And now we're going to add in our 11-0s, once again separating every 2 8-0s, this time going through yellow and sea foam, and then sea foam and yellow, and alternating those all the way down. Go. And we have our 1 remaining 8-0 right there, so we'll pick up our 11-0, go through the last 8-0, and then we'll get our side set up over here, picking up the 11-0 that'll sit off to the side, as well as the next 8-0, which is going to sit above the sea foam. And we're going to now head off to the right, going through the 11-0 that's sticking up, and continuing on now, adding our 2 8-0 seed beads to complete these next units. So now we have a sea foam and a yellow, and then alternating again, yellow and sea foam, going through the 11-0s that are sticking up. And you can see that as you have more to hang on to, and as you have the 11-0s that stick up, it's a lot easier to figure out what you need to add and what you need to go through, and use the color seed beads below you that you've already done to act as a guide to see what you need to pick up. So once again, when we get to the last 11-0 here in this row, where we've already got that final 8-0 in place, we're going to go down the 11-0 like we normally would, but we'll also go diagonally down through that last bead, the 8-0 in the row below us. Popped our 2 8-0s into place, and now we just need to get back up here. So we're going to go up through the 11-0 on the side, and now we can go through the 2 sea foam 8-0s, which sets us up to then do our next round of 11-0s in between each of the 2 colors. So now what you'll want to do if you need to is you can back up the video and keep repeating these steps to complete your subsequent rows. And to make approximately a 7.5-inch bracelet, you're going to go until you have 25 of these little seed beads on the side, or 25 of your little checkerboard unit rows. You're going to have to add on thread if you didn't start with a huge amount, so just keep that in mind. You'll need to tie off your thread once you run out and add a new one, which I have shared in lots of different tutorials, and I think maybe even the Flat Chenille 101 tutorial I showed you how to do that. I know for sure I did in the last tutorial, which was for that Russian spiral. Anyway, keep going if you want that same 7.5-inch length, until you have 25 rows of 2 8-0s or 25 of these little 11-0s on the end. Then we'll meet back. I'm going to show you how to sew in the Sitanos 3 bead ending, so the end of your bracelet is going to look seamless. All right, everyone, so I've already added the Sitanos to this end, which was where my tail thread is. Once you figure out how to do it on one side, you'll know how to do it on the other side. And if you're changing the length of your bracelet, just follow the same sort of steps in order to work that in accordingly. But you can see I've left off here on this bracelet. I've ended with the row of checkerboard that starts and ends with the sea foam, pretty much where I had left off with the tail thread, and then we add on the final row of 8 O's. So it's going to look pretty much the same if you end at a point like that. And I've also added in the final row of 11 O's in between those colors that are sticking out. So that is where I have left off, and this is where I am ready to now add in this finding, which you can see has 3 different loops. It's got a center loop and it's got a loop on either end, and it's going to fit perfectly in here the way that I show you how to sew it in. And what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to flip this over because I want to be working this way to the left. It's just more comfortable. I'm coming out of the 8 O that's on the side right there, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up my yellow 8 O. I'm going to pick up an 11 O. I'm going to go through the loop on the right side of the finding. Go ahead and pull that through your needle. And then I'm going to pick up one more of those yellow 8 O's, and then I'm going to go through the first 11 O right there that is sticking up. And pull. And this can be a little loose at first. We're going to go back and reinforce this. And now we're not ready to attach that middle loop yet. We want to continue on with our pattern. So I'm just going to go ahead and pick up 2 seafoam, which would go on the top of those anyway. And sew through the next 11 O that's sticking out. Then I'm going to pick up 2 yellow, go through the next 11 O that's sticking out, because we're still not quite at the middle, we're almost there. Pop those into place. Now this is where we can start to attach that middle loop. I'm going to pick up a seafoam, then head through the middle loop of the finding, and I'm just going to go ahead and pull my needle through that. Then I'm going to pick up another seafoam, and then head through the next 11 O that's sticking up. There we go, our middle loop is in place. Then we'll continue on 2 of our yellow 8 O's through the next 11 O that's sticking out. Now 2 seafoam through the next 11 O that's sticking out. And now we want to match what we did on the other side to add that final loop. So we're going to pick up a yellow 8 O and then go through the last loop of the finding and pull. And then we want to pick up an 11 O and then another yellow. And now I'm going to go through these 2 seafoam in the row right below that and pull. And here you can see now we have our finding in place, and we just need to reinforce it with our remaining thread. So I'm going to just follow my thread path. I'm actually going to go right back up through the yellow 8 O and through that same end loop on that finding. I'm going to make a little half hitch knot at the corner right after the finding. And this is where I'm just going to start to tie and knot off my thread securely. Going to keep going through the 2 seafoam, then follow the thread path, go through these next 2 seafoam here, the 11 O, I'll go through these 2 yellow, the 11 O, I'm going to go back up through the seafoam right next to the finding as well as the finding loop. And what the heck, I'll make a little half hitch knot right there. Go through the next seafoam. Continuing on till I get to that last finding loop where I can reinforce that again and make a final half hitch knot. And this is hiding our thread along the way too because we're following our thread path. So I'm just going now up the yellow, right next to that ending, going through the ending once more. I'll make a little knot right there in between that and the 11-0 and go down through the 11-0. And I don't have much thread left. I can just use my remaining thread and kind of weave this back through a little bit more, maybe reinforce a little bit more depending on how much thread you have left. And that is all there is to it. You'll pretty much do the exact same thing to attach this finding to the other side of your work. And there's more than one way to do it. This is just one way to do it. And if your length is a little bit different, it will look the same if you start and end on those seafoam checkerboard rows as it does here. So that might be a little bit easier for you. But either way, you'll just get that finding centered and weave it right in so that it looks seamless in your pattern. Once you're ready, then you can clip off any excess thread. And now I have this length of extender chain, a couple of jump rings, and I have a lobster clasp. I'm going to go ahead and twist open one of these jump rings and attach the extender chain right to that jump ring on one side, to that opening on the very end of that finding. Then on the other side, I'm going to open one up, twist, go through that loop right there on the end, and attach the lobster clasp, close it up. And that is all there is to our bracelets. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I hope it was easy for you to follow. Again, just check right down below the video in the description section to find the links to all of these materials from Eureka Crystal Beads, as well as the quantities and the colors that you'll need. Have fun changing up the colors though. Eureka Crystal Beads has all different types of 8-0 seed beads and 11-0s. And these Sitanos findings come in different metal finishes. Huge thank you to you all for being with me today. I really appreciate it. I hope you'll join me again. So definitely hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Hit that thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. Feel free to leave me a comment down below if you plan to give this a try or have given this a try or anything else you'd like to say. Until next time, I hope you have a fabulous rest of your day. And as always, happy beading.